Commissioner Morgan Godwin won't be here. She texted me, and I think some other people might be in and out. We have a really packed agenda today, so we'll get started here. Would you like to call the roll for us, Dr. Richardson, please?
Sure. Commissioner Archer.
Present.
Nice to actually see you. Welcome. Thank
you.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Cruz. Commissioner Cruz. Here she is.
And then the third one.
Ooh, 3. I love the number 3.
Commissioner Cruz.
What? Microphone on.
Caroline?
She just entered.
Yeah, isn't muted.
I don't like this system.
That Teams.
Caroline?
It's in the middle right there with the little microphone. You have to mute it. Right there.
Caroline, we can hear you.
There.
Oh, you want me to mute, not to unmute?
You could say here and then mute.
No, we're always doing Zoom calls, and this is the other one. I couldn't find the mute button. Okay, I'll mute now. Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Hi, Carolyn.
We just didn't want the conversation to get too juicy.
Well, that's Cecilia. You know Cecilia. Don't you know Dr. Richardson? You don't? Oh. Mike Collins does, and Cecilia Collins. Cecilia runs my Child Protective Services, and Mike Collins does my managed care, or he does the managed care for the tribe.
Great. Nice to meet all of you. Welcome. Commissioner Mazziotti.
Here. By phone.
Commissioner Holton.
Here.
Commissioner Minty Morris.
Hi, everyone. I'm here, and I apologize for being on the phone. I'm having Teams trouble.
No problem. We're glad you're here by any means.
Thank you.
Commissioner Godwin is excused. Commissioner Neeson. Commissioner Neeson. Vice Chair Galliran.
Present.
Commissioner Clarkson. Commissioner Garrett. And Chair Vinza.
Present.
Representative Solman's office. Representative Solman.
Nicole is here from Rep. Solman's office.
Hi, Nicole. Welcome.
Dr. Richardson, did you call me and I just missed it?
Who's speaking?
Kat, Yuppie.
I'm sorry. I missed you.
Okay, I'm here.
Thank you. Judge Block? Judge Block? Steve Allen? Director Allen? Dr. Biglin? All right, Chair, we have a quorum.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, everybody, so much for being here. We have Judge Block up first, but it doesn't look like we have him on the call. Would you be prepared to present in Judge Block's place to give him a little extra time?
Sure, I think I can do that.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate you being accommodating.
Let me pull up, I've got a couple slides here if it's helpful.
Sure.
Sure I've got them handy.
While Commissioner Holton is getting his slides together, Heather, okay, I see it. We are recording. Okay, thank you.
And Heather, do we need to give Dwight permission to share, or do we need to send Dwight's content over to you?
I don't think he needs permission. There's like a an arrow, an up arrow button right by the leave.
Gotcha.
There you go.
Gotcha.
Can you guys see my screen there?
Yes.
We can.
Beautiful. Let me move the rest of the meeting over here so I can see you guys still. Well, it's not letting me make it full screen, but oh, there it goes. Okay, great. So Reggie asked me to kind of give an update on some of the things going on at Lines for Life, and I'm hoping you guys can see the slides okay. Are you seeing the slides with the notes as opposed to without, or are you seeing just the normal slides?
It's in presentation mode.
Okay, great. So Reggie asked me to give an update on some of the things we have going on around substance use disorder and addiction and recovery at Lines for Life. So I'm happy to do that. I think lots of you are well familiar with the organization, but I can kind of fill in some details and help those of you who don't know much about it hear a little bit more about us. So, you know, just about every year we lose about 200,000 people to addiction, suicide, and alcohol-related deaths in the United States. It's a breathtaking number. It's more people than we have lost in every war since World War II combined, more Americans that have lost their lives in all of those wars combined. And we do it every year. And the reality is that, as everyone around this table I think knows, is this is a pandemic that will continue next year and the year after and the year after. And it's a pandemic for which there is no vaccine. So that requires work on all of our part to contain it and to support people and to bring that number down and really make a dent. Our mission at Lines for Life is preventing substance abuse and suicide and promoting mental wellness. And I like to tell people we do three things really well. 1, crisis intervention, 2, prevention, and 3, policy and advocacy. Our crisis intervention work takes the form mainly of operating crisis lines. We operate about 36 crisis lines. Maybe it's a little bit more than that these days. That really range from the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. If you call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline in Oregon, the likelihood is you'll get us together with one other nonprofit. We serve the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline in Oregon. To county crisis lines that we serve, to private sector lines, like, for example, Providence and Kaiser Health Systems. We also host the state's alcohol and drug helpline and a couple other relevant lines that I'll give you a little bit more flavor for. Our prevention work in the community, a big chunk of that looks like convening people towards action. You know, someone at OHA said to me many years ago that Lines for Life superpower is convening. We're really decent at getting people together and making them leave with to-do lists. So we host the state's OPAT conference, the Oregon Pain, Addiction and Addiction Treatment and Opioids and Other Drugs Pain and Addiction Treatment Conference. We haven't been able to have it for 2 years now. I'm very frustrated. We were planning to have it in November at Sun River, but it's a really interesting event where we bring together 400, 500 people who are stakeholders ranging from folks with lived experience to addiction and treatment professionals to third-party payers and health systems folks, law enforcement folks, really everybody who's got an oar in the water here. And then last but not least, we do policy and advocacy around mental wellness and substance abuse and suicide prevention. when I kind of think of the kind of top line substance use disorder and recovery initiatives at Lines for Life, I think of them really in two categories. One, the crisis intervention category, and two, prevention category. There's certainly policy and advocacy around it as well. But the crisis intervention initiatives include the Alcohol and Drug Helpline, our Measure 110 assessment line, the Behavioral Health Directory, that we're helping create, and other initiatives. And our prevention initiatives include, as I mentioned, our OPAT conference, a community substance use disorder strategy initiative we have, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a second, our youth line, and our, last but not least, our school suicide prevention and wellness initiative. I'll start with the Alcohol and Drug Helpline. As I mentioned, we operate about 36 crisis lines. One of them is the state's Alcohol and Drug Helpline, which has been a steady part of our role since Lines for Life was founded 25 years ago. We help, most years between 6,000 and 8,000 people. This year, it's looking to be more like 10,500 people navigate and address their challenges around addiction and those of their family and loved ones. So these calls run the gamut from people who are in recovery but struggling, to folks who are thinking about recovery, to family and friends and loved ones of people who really need to be in recovery. And our general strategy is connecting them with the many great community resources around Oregon to provide addiction and recovery services. We don't provide the services ourselves. We're about crisis intervention and connection to service. I mentioned the ballot measure 110 a health assessment line. I think probably everyone here knows that the measure 110 was intended to both decriminalize possession of narcotics, but also build kind of a replacement bridge to addiction treatment and recovery, to replace the role that the criminal justice system was playing in connecting people to recovery services, with a more humane and appropriate approach to connecting people to addiction services. And one of the components of that, just one, is a system of citing people with a civil citation for violating, for possessing narcotics. And the goal is to give these people an option, essentially. You can pay a $100 fine if you're cited. You can contest the facts, of course, or you can go through a health assessment with Lines for Life currently set up as the statewide center for that. That could be, if you choose to go that route, a connection to recovery. So we do an assessment that explores the health of a person and explores options for healthier choices, including recovery, and then ultimately connects people to recovery services if that's what they want to do. I have started raising a yellow flag about this because we are not hearing from a tremendous number of people. In fact, it's a very small trickle of people. And that's to be expected at some level. Starting new lines is always a slow business, but I had hoped that the Measure 110 citation would become a part of the uniform citation used by law enforcement officers throughout Oregon to ticket people for a whole variety of things, from driving offenses to other things. There's this standard form, right? If you've ever been caught speeding, you get a standard form, and the officer checks which box he or she thinks you've violated, whether it's speeding or whatever, and it gives you very clear options. If you get a speeding ticket, you can either pay the ticket, you can show up in court, or you can call the clerk and try and work out something out. And here are those three options. My hope back in January, when we began working on this project, was that we would be able to get Measure 110 onto that uniform citation. But it has not happened. And I'm beginning to worry that it's not going to happen, because the real estate on that citation is tight, and there are other priorities. But I am concerned that if we don't get on that form, that ball is gonna be dropped almost every time. So that ball from when the officer tickets the person to when they decide what happens next, it just appears to be dropping over and over again. So we know that there have been about 1,100 tickets issued between February 1st and June 30th. 700 of them have resulted in convictions, 400 through failure to appear, another 300 or 400 through showing up in court and essentially accepting responsibility. So that's 800 of the 1,100, or 700 of the 1,100. But only about 100 of those people have called Lines for Life, have called the assessment line, and only 50 or so as of June 1 had gone through the assessment. That disconnect is happening right at that moment the person is ticketed. We've done everything we can, or we've done many things anyway, to get into the hands of law enforcement officers the information they need to share with the ticketed person. But it's just not happening. For the most part, people don't ignore speeding tickets. If they get that uniform violation form, they have clear direction with authority as to what to do. We're not getting that, and as a result, we're just not hearing from people. I think it also raises a question about whether or not the fact that there are pretty limited consequences for failure to respond is a factor as well. But the main thing, I think, at this point is we really need to clean that up and get on this uniform citation form. So those are our principal crisis intervention lines, the A&D line and the Measure 110 line. We are also working closely with the Oregon Health Authority to develop a behavioral health directory that will be a real-time database of available capacity for addiction treatment services. It started as a Recovery Now line around medication-assisted treatment opportunities and OTPs, opioid treatment providers. It's grown. Our hope, working with the state, is to get it into being really a comprehensive behavioral health resource, not only for addiction, but for mental health services that are available right now. So when we are making a referral on our crisis line, or a consumer is looking for a service right now, they'll be able to find out, aha, there's a spot at CODA that seems to fit me and my insurance right now, or there's a spot at DePaul or wherever. I mentioned our prevention services, our prevention team services, and I mentioned in particular the OPAT conference. This is just a snapshot of the OPAT agenda from 2019 to give you kind of a flavor for the role of convening that team plays. But it's been a really powerful event. It started in Southern Oregon with Jim Shames many years ago and Oregon Pain Guidance, and has grown into this statewide event that's really kind of a must-attend event for people who are ready to make system-wide change around the way we think about addiction and recovery and treatment. It is retained a health system focus on purpose. So it's not by no means exclusively health system, but what we've tried to do is pull the health systems towards a clearer embrace of addressing social determinants, of understanding ACEs, of making resiliency a priority, and try to harness the very significant power of change that exists in health systems and among health professionals, and harness that change for those upstream prevention priorities. I mentioned that one of our other initiatives is the Community Substance Use Disorder Strategies Initiative. This is really cool. A couple years ago, Tillamook County and Tillamook Adventist Hospital got a grant from HRSA to build a community strategy around addiction. They were focused primarily on opioid prescribing at the time. That made sense when they got it. But they drafted it as a really broad-based community strategy, and they hired us and Dr. Shames and others to come and help them build that strategy. For Lines for Life, it was a role of really a convening role, and a role that through hosting the various opioid summits we've hosted over the years, both the statewide summits we host now, as well as the regional summits we hosted years before that, we've just developed a really good sense of the right faculty and expertise around the state that we're able to connect in with communities to build strategic plans. So we we help Tillamook build their strategic plan. It's really impressive and really reflects community priorities and community opportunities. Oregon Health Authority loved it and has asked us to replicate that in 4 or 5 other communities. So we're currently standing that up now. And just the last initiative, 2 initiatives I'll mention are the Oregon Youth Line, or both Oregon Youth Line related. If you don't know, the Youth Line is a peer-to-peer crisis and prevention service operated by Lines for Life. We have teens who will go through about 55, 60 hours of training supervised by master's level clinicians who both who do really 3 things. One, they provide peer crisis and support services on text, by chat, by telephone. They do classroom education and community outreach, and they become real locuses for mental wellness in their own communities through mentorship and development that we help with. It is a really exciting program. The peer crisis and support services, as I said, essentially operate their own crisis line within our world, targeted to teens, answered by teens. It's kind of breathtaking what's happened in the Youth Line over the last couple of years. When I started at Lines for Life back in 2014, we were talking to about 1,100 people. Last year, we talked to 28,000, and we expect this year to be close to 35,000 contacts on the Youth Line. That's mostly by text. Certainly phone and chat are also popular, but as you might expect, teenagers for the most part reach us by text. We had, when I started, 9 volunteers on the Youth Line. Currently, we have about 165 Youth Line volunteers who've gone through this 50 to 60 hours of training and who each give us about 200 hours of their time each year helping serve others. We hear from youth for a range of issues: suicide, self-harm, bullying, family issues. Sometimes it's kids who are calling because they're trying to figure out how to tell their mom they failed a math test. Sometimes it's a young person calling because they're starting a relationship with somebody else and don't understand what it means and what it takes and want to have somebody to talk to about it. This is a prevention initiative at its absolute core, because the most demanding purpose of the Youth Line is to help young people develop help-seeking skills and to normalize help-seeking. We know that young people talk to young people. We also understand that young people aren't the solution much, if not most of the time. So it's not that we're there to provide counsel, to answer questions. It's more that we're there to help young people identify appropriate help-seeking outlets, whether it's parents, coaches, community resources, counselors, etc. And this is a prevention initiative through and through, because if we can help young people develop those help-seeking skills early, they're less likely to end up resorting to coping skills like alcohol and drug abuse. One of the things I learned early on from the Youth Line team is that physiologically, the stress that young people feel from the types of issues on this slide are literally physiologically identical to the stress I feel about making sure my mortgage is paid or making sure I can meet payroll. The difference is I have 55 years of coping skills that help me work through that stress, and our young people don't. So if the Youth Line can help those kids develop those coping skills, normalize help-seeking, normalize getting help from people, then we're going to be able to have a significant impact on heading people off from the types of challenges that come around coping skills like addiction, like alcohol and drug abuse. Volunteers are supervised by master's level clinicians. They're never expected to handle contacts that are high risk for suicide. It's certainly not alone. And supervisors are there to support in every way. I mentioned that there were 3 components to the Youth Line, 1 being the call center, 2 being classroom outreach, 3 being the role that these young people play in their communities as sources for support. The outreach is really cool. We have grown the outreach significantly in recent years to the point that we're reaching as tens of thousands of people in schools throughout Oregon. this is pretty cool because what this looks like is not your typical kind of guest assembly or anything like that. Rather, we work with the teachers to substitute for the teachers, guest teach, as it were, to address topics on the Oregon core curriculum. So, for example, bullying and suicide are both on the Oregon core curriculum. So rather than having a football coach or whoever, that's who I had as my health teacher, try and teach try and teach young people about suicide prevention or bullying or substance use, we have peers do it. We have teens who work with people in crisis, many of whom have lived experience themselves, talking about these issues. They're supervised by master's level clinicians, but it's the kind of connection that is invaluable and helps build those help-seeking skills. We're all over the state. When we update this, we'll be able to fill in Klamath and Lake and some of the other counties that aren't identified here. But it's very exciting work. And it's grown into the last initiative I'll mention, which is a school safety, the Student Success Act initiative around student wellness and suicide prevention. We tried out an initiative in the Willamette Valley with the Willamette Education Service District. We teamed up with the ESD there. It's 3 counties, Marion, Lynn, and Pope, Marion, Lynn, and Yamhill, rather. And the ESDs, if you don't know, the Education Service Districts serve as kind of a super school board for school boards throughout a region. And they do everything from helping them get physical supplies to trainings to helping them with other policy initiatives and supporting those schools. So we teamed up with the Willamette ESD to build a suicide prevention and wellness initiative that teamed up Youthline with folks at the ESD who know how to make policy and system change at schools. And what it's looked like is changes like now almost every school in those 3 counties has the Youthline as a resource on their student IDs. Faculty in almost every school in those counties have been trained in evidence-based trainings like youth mental health first aid and question, persuade, refer, which is a kind of gold standard short version suicide prevention training. Some have been trained in assist. We've conducted forums throughout schools in all of those counties for real kind of enduring system change. And here's the punchline. The Student Success Act a couple of years ago took this system statewide. So we now have 5, at Lines for Life, 5 student suicide prevention and wellness coordinators who work directly with ESDs around the state. They're embedded in the education service districts. They have an education service district partner, and together they support schools in building suicide prevention and mental wellness initiatives. And obviously, suicide prevention is a slightly different topic from addiction, but not really, because we're really talking about help seeking and responding to trauma and challenge, and the climate improvement that we expect to see from this work is going to have an important impact on both.
Hey, Dwight, let me hop in really quick and see if Ron Williams is here. He was slated to present at 1:30. I don't see his name on there. Ron, are you by chance calling in on one of the phone numbers? Doesn't appear so. And Judge Block had unexpectedly needed to leave town, and so he won't be presenting today. So Dwight, I'll let you continue presenting, and we can have a discussion with commission around all the wonderful stuff you're doing. And if Ron doesn't come on, then we will move forward with our agenda to our executive director update and discussion.
That's perfect. I'll just keep going for the next 2 hours then, right, Tony?
Sure.
So I'm actually done, but I do want to mention one last initiative, 988. As I think lots of y'all know, the nation is moving to a 3-digit system for addressing crisis in the United States, 988. As of July next year, you'll be able to pick up the phone pretty much anywhere in the United States, dial 988, and reach the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. While in some other states, they're really billing this as a narrow suicide prevention initiative, in Oregon, we really are treating it as a broader mental health support system that I think is going to help bring people to recovery not only from mental illness and depression and anxiety, but also from the kind of factors that are driving addiction and from addiction itself. So we're very excited about that as well. And with that, I'm done.
Cool. Thanks so much, Dwight. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for Commissioner Holton regarding the slew of stuff that Lines for Life is doing? One at a time.
I have a question. Dwight, you mentioned this in your presentation about the lack of cost to the 110 hotline. Can you say more about what you think needs to happen in order to increase the number of folks calling and therefore the assessment? Ron is coming in now, Chair, so that folks actually get the entree into treatment through that assessment process. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, I think the principal breakdown is happening that this is not a systemized part of law enforcement response because it's not on that uniform citation. And I'd be interested to hear if Pat thinks I'm off base on this, but I really just think that it's new to the officers. They have not, there's not been I think the Sheriffs and Chiefs Association has tried its best to do education around this. But there was not a lot of outreach kind of in the November to January period after 110 passed. So it's a matter of getting folks trained, but there's no better training method, I don't think, than putting this thing on that uniform citation, and then it'll just be part of their regular procedures. I was on a call once earlier in the year with someone from the governor's office who was saying, well, we can just get this, at roll call, right? We can talk about this at roll call. I mean, that's TV, man. That's not how you actually communicate effectively with the hundreds and hundreds of law enforcement officers around the state. So there are some targeted things we can do. I got to get in a call to the Grants Pass chief. Grants Pass has taken 110 very seriously. They've issued a bunch of tickets. We're not getting a bunch of calls from them. So I don't know if we haven't gotten the materials to the right person there, or if just they've been issuing the materials, but it's falling down with the ticketed person. But I think, Pat can tell us, I don't think many people ignore speeding tickets. And so if we become a part of that system, I think we'll get a better response.
Did I answer your question, Dr. Richardson?
Yeah. Sheriff Garrett does have his hand up, and also I believe Carolyn from.
Yep. Yeah, I got him. Go ahead, Pat.
Thank you, Chair Zine. Thanks, Dwight. First of all, kudos to Dwight, your team. They presented at our Public Safety Coordinating Council last Friday about Measure 110, provided some of the local statistics that you covered in your presentation. William Nooneman did a really fantastic job. And what we did after that meeting, because we too are concerned about the failure to appear rate, we're inviting Billy to our Law Enforcement Council meeting next month with all the chiefs, the DA. Going to cover that information and just make sure that our officers and deputies are providing that collateral material to those individuals who are receiving a criminal violation, that citation for the criminal violation, just to make sure that they have the information they need to make that call. We're just not sure, right? So we did outreach ahead of the rollout, but now we just need to check ourselves and make sure we're providing the right material to folks that are receiving those citations. In our county, it's only about 2 a week, right? So it's not a super high frequency when those citations are issued, but we just want to make sure we're doing the very best we can to do it the right way. The idea about it being on a uniform traffic citation or a uniform citation, that is appealing. Because there's just a lot, as Dwight referred to, there's a lot that a police officer, deputy, trooper, has to remember to provide, victims' rights information. And the more we can simplify it, the better success we're going to have. But until then, we just want to make sure we're getting the right collateral material out. So that's our focus in our county. So thank you.
Thanks, Pat. And I'm going to get you, Caroline. First, I just want to check in with Ron. Ron, I see that you're here now, and I want to make sure that you would be okay with staying a little bit later than when you were originally slated so we can continue this discussion. Is that okay, Ron?
Yeah, that sounds fine. Sounds like a great discussion.
Thank you so much. Okay, thanks, Ron. Caroline, you want to go ahead and hop in?
Sure. Thank you, Dwight, for that presentation. I think Dwight and I go back a number of years, and I was able to go up to the CLCC campus up in Bend when they started the youth hotline up in the on campus. And I don't know, Dwight, if you mentioned that Warm Springs is going to become a satellite office for youth suicide, and we signed the agreement to work with Lines for Life. So I just wanted to give him kudos and the work he's done over the years, and how we are going to be partnering with him with the tribes. Thank you.
We are so excited about the Warm Springs satellite for the youth line. And this is going to be great for lots of reasons, but one reason that's relevant to this room is workforce development. We've learned in our Central Oregon office, we have a Central Oregon office that's focused on the youth line. It's based at OSU Cascades, as Caroline mentions. We're peeling off the satellite to Warm Springs. And what we're seeing is young people, teens, who've really maybe thought college was a reach for them, and we're putting them on a college campus in a way they own it. And we're connecting them with both students and faculty at that university in a field, namely behavioral health, that is desperate for jobs, and they can actually get these jobs and stay in their own communities rather than have to come over the hill to Portland. It is, if we can replicate that on the res, it'll be a huge win. So we're super excited about it, Carolyn.
Yeah, thanks, Dwight. Jill Archer, would you like to chime in? I see your hands raised.
Yeah, thank you. I just had a question, and I'm actually not sure who to direct it to. Ron, maybe this is something you could speak to. As the behavioral health resource networks stand up regionally across the state, I'm worried that's going to create confusion even more for law enforcement who are now directing people to Lines for Life, but then will they want to be directing people to their local behavioral health resource network, or is it kind of you get an option and there's no wrong door? I'm just curious if anyone could speak to that.
Yeah, from my perspective, it's more the latter, which is that there's no wrong door, and it would be a both-and situation, that a person would be able to access services directly at the local burn service provider, or call the what is now a permanent line, as I understand.
Cool, thanks, Jill. Do any of the other commissioners have any questions? Well, Dwight, I have one for you. So it looks like from a systems perspective, you're kind of trying to create this central station in a lot of ways for the state, for people to come to, communicate, get the services they need. Well, it looks like one of those tools will be through kind of this interactive website where I'll go in, say, this is what I need, and it'll show me, available resources that are applicable to me. Do you have any sort of timeline on when something like that could be stood up? I know California's, I think LA County has something like that, and it's really, really cool. And I think it would be really, really helpful. I constantly field phone calls, Facebook messages, primarily from parents with transition age youth looking for services and they can't find anything.
So yeah, no, it's so needed. We're working on it, is the best I can tell you. I can tell you what the big hurdle is. It's provider engagement. And Tony, I should go make sure you're in it, right? I mean, what we have found is that it is a burden on providers, because it's only good if the data is up to date. So you need someone to kind of go in each day and reload their data, whether or not they have spots, what the spots look like, who they're for, et cetera. And our team, it's also Billy, by the way, Pat, is working really hard to make that easier for providers. But, from the very first conversations we had with OHA, we've talked about the fact that at some point, this is going to have to be a rubber meets the road moment. We just got to get there. And the Oregon Council for Behavioral Health is helping us too. So that's a long way of saying, I don't know yet. We're trying really hard. We have a big hill to climb on getting providers actually into it.
Thanks, Brian. I see that Heather's here now as well. Go ahead. I
was just going to say, I think I had the numbers in my head yesterday, but they went out. But we have probably, I think it's 40 some odd providers regularly updating, and 200 who are in it and another 200 who need to be in it. So the hill is big.
Okay, anything we can do to help you, let me know. Nate, go ahead, and then we'll probably move on to Ron.
Thanks for the discussion. Grants Pass Police Department is issuing those citations. I think they have the most in the state, by far, it was my understanding. But I put in the chat just an example of the citations that they're issuing. At the bottom, it does have the Lines for Life number, and I just wanted to double check with Dwight, is that the right number? Because they're printing that on the citation and distributing those citations to folks that are getting those violations. Dwight, you're muted.
I had to find my cursor. Yeah, let's talk offline, Nate, because I'm interested. I bet I'm interested to know what they're doing. But I was going to email, just reach out to the chief. But let's talk offline.
Okay, that sounds good. Just for public's reference, and maybe this might help you, Sheriff Garrett, is there at the very bottom of that citation is where they're printing that Lines for Life. So that's all I had, Mr. Chair.
Well, thanks, Nate. And thanks for all the work that you're doing, Dwight. And I'll just echo about William Noonan. I went to college with him, and we've been working with him on a Clackamas County initiative, and he's been really professional and working really hard. So give him a promotion. And I just want to say, it's really nice to have you here, Dwight. You got your fingers in a lot of stuff, and your perspective, knowledge, and all the work you're doing is really meaningful to the commission's work. With that, we'll pivot and go over to Ron Williams to give us an update on the Oversight and Accountability Council of Measure 110.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Dr. Richardson, and the commission for the invitation to come back and provide an update on the OAC. I want to say hello to my fellow OAC members who are on the commission. I'm not sure if Morgan is here. I think I heard Caroline. And Dr. Richardson, who is officially seated this week on the Oversight and Accountability Council. I want to welcome him officially to the OAC and thank him again for having me here. So in terms of an update, what I'll start with is Senate Bill 755. I'm sure you all know that made style and form changes to the Measure 110 law, the Drug Addiction Treatment Recovery Act. It made style and form changes. It added detail and provided some clarifications, addressed a couple of the silences. The law was originally, there are a couple of those that I want to mention. One was that included in the law was a specific acknowledgement or recognition of the 9 federally recognized tribes. The law had originally been silent on the tribes, and so now they're included in the law. The law was also silent on youth, and youth are now included in the law and addressed in the law. That youth will be referred to the juvenile system rather than the adult court, and the juvenile courts would be able to, if they deemed it necessary, to require the youth to receive an assessment, a full assessment. So those are two things that I want to note. And I think you guys were talking about one of the things that the law requires law enforcement to provide information to the person receiving the violation on the screening process and how to get the fine waived and the citation cleared. Another area that I'll mention is the law clarified that that these cases would be handled in circuit court. And I think, I'm not sure if I talked about this, but originally the citations were going to municipal court and circuit court and other courts, but now it's clarified that all of these will be addressed in circuit court. And so, so that's what I want to say about Senate Bill 755. The other update would be the Oversight and Accountability Council finished an RFP process of where they granted around $30 million to more than 50 organizations around the state. The organizations throughout the state were received funding anywhere from, I think, from $50,000 all the way up to 1.4 million, I think is the largest. Most of those contracts have been signed. Most of them have been, well, many of them have. I would say the number that I'm hearing from OHA is they kind of did it in two parts. The first part was based on the speaker's note, releasing X amount of dollars, around 20 million. And then the Senate Bill 755 released another 13 million. And so all that money, so they're kind of being dealt with by OHA in two different streams. The first stream, 36 organizations have already kind of signed contracts and began receiving funding. In the second round, the budget note from the House Ways and Means that was part of 755 ended up, it's still being kind of processed through the system. So that was a big deal. There was a lot of involvement from the council. There were, I think, 9 members of the council that were part of the creating the grant language, establishing the values, and then participating in the evaluation process. And so we're really proud of being able to get that $30 million out as a direct infusion to existing organizations to meet emergency needs that are ongoing still to this day. So where we're at now is we've begun the Senate Bill 755, of course, adjusted the timeline for implementation, which required that the law requires that we establish rules and requirements for the behavioral health resource networks by September 1st. We were able to get temporary rules filed by September 1st. And so the temporary rules are already posted, and we are moving ahead with the permanent rule making process, where we're in the process of establishing, creating and inviting folks to participate in the RAG, notifying the legislature, and doing the process for permanent rules. And we're doing that process simultaneously with the RFP for the 21-23 biennium, where we have begun the process of developing the RFP language, which we hope to have completed and the new RFP posted or announced no later than October 1st. We plan to have 6 weeks of that proposal being open. And then by November 15th, we plan to close the opportunity and then begin the evaluation process with the intent of having funding out no later than the end of December, with contracts and funding out no later, with contracts signed and funding out no later than January 15th. So that's kind of the update in a nutshell. I don't know if anyone has any questions. The other thing I'll mention is that we're doing it kind of in 2 parts, like the Behavioral Health Resource Network funding and opportunity is going to happen first, and then will be immediately followed by the increased access to care grants. So they'll be about 2 weeks apart. They'll follow each other. So there's my update. Caroline, or did you want to add anything? Or I can't see if Morgan's here. Is Morgan here? No?
Yeah, Ron, I'm here.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. I think you summarized it pretty well. We just always seem to be on the fast track. It seems like we can't. I mean, we've been meeting every week. I think I only missed one of those. And so it's every week since March. There's been a lot of growth. And so, yeah, I thought you summarized it really well. Thank you.
Yeah, I have the stat that we've met 32 times over the past 7 months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I think you summarized it. That's a wild figure there, the 32 in 7 months. Oh my goodness.
So if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but that's my update.
Sure, thanks so much, Ron. Any of the commissioners have any questions?
Hey, I don't have a question, Ron. I just want to really just publicly say how much I appreciate partnership between the council and this commission, and we'll continue to sort of joint participate so that we make sure that communication is flowing so that we're all rowing in the same direction. Appreciate your outreach and your leadership.
Yeah, and I want to circle back to the Rules Advisory Committee idea that we're actually in the process of identifying kind of primary folks to invite. And so if there are folks who are interested in participating in a Rules Advisory Committee, the council is in the process of kind of entertaining that now. We started naming names and identifying kind of categories, but if anyone wants to reach out to me or Dr. Richardson, if they have an interest, that would be great. And that would be helpful to our process.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Yes. Any other questions from anybody?
And I'm happy to come back at any time.
No, yeah, we appreciate it. I just kind of have a question for you, Ron. Given your purview, do you see the system, from what you can see, kind of strategizing around how Measure 110 will be investing in the community? Specifically, you know, I think there's been a lot of pressure put on OHA and the governor's office, you know, around where they're making investments to have clarity around it. And I think one big missing piece to that puzzle is understanding how the investments from Measure 110 will be rolled out so that subsequently other investments could be made. Do you kind of see that happening from your purview on the council?
So, you know, the work that we're doing, the investments that we're making are, you know, alongside, in addition to, an expanding current capacity. And so we're seeing, so we do see an alignment with current proposals, particularly in the behavioral health investment space. My understanding is that the behavioral health system has had an infusion of, you know, nearly $1 billion between Measure 110 and the 300 that we've been allocated, plus the 400 from the legislature is like $750 million. And so, in terms of OHA communicating the balance of their strategy to manage this investment, no, but the Oversight and Accountability Council is really clear on being in addition to and alongside existing services to expand capacity on a fast track.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate that. And anything that we can do to continue collaborating and working together to make the system wholesome, you know, and effective and efficient and meeting the needs of the community, you know, please continue to let us know. With that, Dr. Richardson, I'll pass it off to you.
Thanks. Thanks again, Ron.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to take off, guys.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Just wanted to begin a conversation about the Alcohol and Drug Policy Commission's capacity to fully implement our strategic plan. This conversation that I'm about to initiate with you really came out of a conversation that I had with our chair and vice chair in one of our leadership meetings, and expressing, to be quite frank, my frustration that we submitted our strategic plan to the governor and the legislature well in advance of the required July 2020 date. We did it in February 2020, and it has been a struggle to move forward to implementation. As you all remember, COVID hit at that point. We were told that we weren't going to be able to bring forward a major financial ask because the state was in really budget shortfall and that we were in a cut environment. It turned out that the budget did much better than we anticipated, yet we did not get the kind of resource necessary to fully implement the systemic and transformational change that is required and is articulated in the state's strategic plan. It's not just the commission's strategic plan, it is adopted by Oregon as its strategic plan as it relates to SUD prevention, treatment, and recovery supports. And so I liken it to being asked to put out a fire in a house where there are people who are dying in the house of smoke inhalation, of flames and fire, yet we've been given a bucket to basically put that fire out. And that's frustrating for me, and I'm sure it's frustrating for all of you. We've done lots of different things to try to get attention to our plan and to get agencies and others to implement the plan as written. We've fixed it up, we've shortened it, we've made it longer. There are different versions. The original plan is 87 pages. We've got a 1-pager, we got a 3-pager, we got a 4-pager. We've marketed it in multiple ways to multiple people. But the implementation still hasn't occurred. And that's frustrating because we've been asked to have a plan. We have a plan, but we haven't been able to get Oregon to move forward in that plan. And so I wanted to share with you a couple of additional ideas that we have around trying to move this forward and to open it up for suggestions and discussions from the commissioners as to what you think we ought to be doing. I will say that in the 2.5 years that I've been here, we have made some progress. We are at tables. We have been invited to conversations that the commission has never been invited before. We sit on various groups. We're certainly at the table. We just aren't able to move it the way that is required. And although some may find the fact that people know who we are and we're being invited to participate in these conversations, it hasn't changed the fact that we're dead last when it comes to addiction rates. And so that's frustrating. We had an executive order that the governor issued over 2 years ago. That order actually expired once the plan was written. And so I have sent to you all, and I hope you've had a chance to look at a draft executive order, a revised executive order that I want to solicit your feedback and support as we move forward, trying to get our agency friends. There are 14 agencies that impact SUD, and so we call them participating agencies. We have memorandums of understanding with most of those agencies, but again, that has not resulted in the kind of action necessary to move forward. We believe that this work starts with meaningful coordination and integration. We heard that loud and clear when we were out preparing our strategic plan, when we did our listening sessions. And what this draft executive order attempts to do is to take some of the items from the strategic plan, section 1 of the strategic plan, which is the integration coordination section. It takes some of what was in House Bill 2313 last year that did not pass, but we wanted requirements for various coordination meetings and so forth. It requires that we conduct a mapping exercise on what the other agencies are doing and that we come up with a set of recommendations to submit to the governor's office to move this forward. Folks, I don't believe that the executive order is the end-all be-all to this, but I think it I think it potentially gives us the authority that's necessary to move in the area of coordination that I think is desperately needed in our state. So I'm going to just take a pause there and catch my breath and see if there are any questions, comments, reactions to what I've said so far. Chair?
Yes, thank you so much, Reggie. And let me just be the first to say that I just recognize all the hard work and struggle that you and your staff have undergone towards making this plan work and making the state better. And I just really want to honor that, given the lack of support that I've seen you get. So that's the first thing I want to say. And then I just want to open up to the other commissioners. Did you guys have a chance to read the letter? And if so, do you have, or the executive order, I'm sorry. And if so, do you have any thoughts about it? Go ahead, Jill, and then I'll get you, Pat, and the other individuals.
Thank you. First, I echo the chair's comments, and I think the executive order is strong and would be really helpful. The one question I have is there a venue? So, for example, if participating partner organizations are not doing what their commitment was, or performing in the way that we had hoped, where does that go? Like, is there a venue for escalating that? So that was my only question. I totally support the order.
Thank you. Thanks, Commissioner. Yeah, there isn't a sort of resolution process. The fantasy would be, once we have sustained the governor's authority to be the convening body, that we then, through the policy advisors for the agencies, use that as the convening or the process of resolving any conflict or the lack of movement, let's say. Right now, we don't really have that mechanism. We have the beginning steps of it. We have a mission statement, we have a vision statement, but we don't have the oomph to actually move it. And COVID has changed the landscape for sure. But we can't keep using COVID as the excuse for inaction. We've got programs today who may not be here tomorrow. And you know that. You know that better than I do. And so our response is, let me stop there.
And Jill, does that answer your question? Well, thank you so much for that.
That's the missing piece.
Go ahead, keep going. Okay, cool. Thank you so much. And I think we all share your frustration, Dr. Richardson. Pat Garrett, you had raised your hand, and then Tony Bigland, I'll get you.
Thank you, Tony. Jill asked my question. Dr. Richardson answered it. And just, all honor and support to you, Dr. Richardson, and your team's frustration and this commission's frustration. COVID has intensified and compounded the substance use disorder problems the state's facing. So yeah, I'm all with it. And if there was a mechanism to escalate or have some designated, policy person with some punch out of the governor's office that we could meet with quarterly, or you could meet with quarterly, maybe that is an approach as well, if that's receptive to the governor's office. Thanks.
Yeah, we will add that suggestion to it. I think it's a great suggestion from both you and Jill. We'll play with some language and see what we can get through. I think that's a great idea.
Tony, down Asiati, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, let me get Tony Bigland, and then Don, I'll get to you.
Thank you.
It would help me to have examples of specific things that we'd like some of these agencies to do. As I read this, I'm seeing that they will, according to this, they will be required to respond to us, to have a key person in each of these agencies. But isn't there a sense in which we're trying to get them to do specific things?
Yeah.
that this might say, and they will do what the commission tells them to do, you know.
Yeah, what that is not arbitrary. It's what they've actually agreed to by the strategic plan. Every agency, with the exception of Veterans Affairs, because they were not included at the beginning, had a participant when we developed the strategic plan, and in essence signed off on the strategic plan. So we have identified agencies in the strategic plan. So I think it spells out what we're asking them to do. Further, if they don't agree with what we've asked them to do, how about tell us that and say, here's what we can do. Here's what we're willing to do. Any steps other than the ignorance of us is, I think, would put us ahead of the game.
So
answering emails. You know, our data, the data that's in the strategic plan doesn't belong to us. We don't collect it. We don't keep it. We don't have access to it unless we go through a partner in order to obtain it. That automatically puts us one down, you know, so just simple things like, you know, making sure we understand where we are in terms of performance would be great if we had data. I mean, I could go on, and it's in the plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Go ahead, Don, and then I will get you, Caroline.
Thank you. Don Mazziotti. I first of all, I'd like to say I think the draft is very well done. There are pieces that might be added or wordsmithing which need to be accomplished. I don't know. I like it as it is, frankly. What I do want to say is I was appointed to the commission to represent two constituencies, the business community and the homeless people. And obviously, this is not addressing either of those, but I wanted to raise the commission's attention to the need for intervention or assistance by the business community, because they are 30% of our workforce are in organizations represented by another organization, you know, like the Portland Business Alliance and so forth. And these organizations are the ones that actually feel the pain or loss of folks who are suffering from any one of a variety of substance abuse disorders, including mental illness. But let's focus on SUD. These are the folks that are impacted directly and economically. The agencies obviously are not directly affected, as we are not directly affected, but I would love it if we turn some attention to what the business community can do about this issue. I think there's a lot they could do that they're not doing. Thank you.
And Don, did you have some sort of recommendation to accomplish that through this executive order?
No, not in the executive order. I think it requires a different approach. Thank you, Tony.
Okay, no worries. Thank you so much. Caroline.
I'm not really sure how to phrase this, so I guess I'm just going to say it. We either have authority or we don't. And if no one gives us the authority, then we're going to be having this conversation a year from now. And I remember, you know, when I got put on the commission, it was, the first meeting I went to is our retreat. And I remember saying something like, I don't want to be part of another bookend. I have bookends all over my office. We've met and met and met and met, and it's a bookend. It's not open. And there's so much knowledge inside these bookends. There's a lot of work that we put in. But if no one gives us the authority, and if someone doesn't, I don't know, there needs to be, I don't want to come across too harsh because I already got in trouble with tribal council this morning for saying some stuff. And so just let me give you the analogy. So we have an outbreak of COVID cases. All summer we were down really low. We had some multiple funerals and people did not follow protocol. we were given the authority as a COVID team to come up with protocols. Protocols will work if they're followed. If they're not followed, they're not going to work. So I got a little bit in trouble because of the fact that I said that we need to follow protocols, and we wouldn't have had this outbreak if people would have followed the rules. So they took offense to that because it was insensitive towards funerals and towards the fact that when you're grieving, the last thing you want is protocols, is rules. That's true. We never had COVID before. So I think 36 cases in 3 days is tragic. Unfortunately, out of those 36, 50% had been vaccinated. So now who do you blame? They got vaccinated. We never said being vaccinated meant you did away with protocols. However, we had been misled in the past. You got vaccinated, maybe you don't never have to wear a mask. Now we're finding out we had breakthroughs. So unless we're allowed to set up policies, or in this case, our strategic plan, and unless we're given some authority over other agencies to make sure that they're engaged, and Dr. Richardson is right. They were represented. They had opportunity to read it. And that's the same thing happened to me this morning. That's the fact that they had the protocols, they could read it, but it's kind of like, well, maybe they forgot. I mean, maybe they, they were in the moment of grieving, and so rules don't impact. I don't want us to have a crisis in order for us to remember that we have a state plan. So we either get the governor to say, hey, you guys are the lead, because I'm on so many committees, I maybe too many, that I could put the puzzle together. And with Measure 110 and reminding them, there's a state plan, and other entities, the 988 committee, there's a state plan. The Civil Cyber Committee, there's a state plan. I mean, there's almost so many committees that there's too many parts, and none of it, we're like a puzzle. We're all part of a puzzle, but none of us could see the picture. And that picture is the state strategic plan. But we can't see the picture, we're only a part of it. So I don't know if the responsibility comes back to us to get people to see a picture again. And this is what I realized this morning. Okay, you need to get those protocols back out there. You need to remind the community. You need to remind them the consequences of not following the protocol. I'm not here to punish the people. That's the last thing I want to do. But we also don't want to see our numbers continue to be up. And they continue to go up. I don't want us to put all this money into Measure 110 just for us to conclude that there was no change because we didn't work together. And so unless we get some teeth, I don't see us going anywhere. I mean, we have to have some authority. I mean, so I don't really need an answer. I think I'm just venting. Sorry.
No, I appreciate that, Caroline, so much. And in this draft executive order, it looks like the architecture behind it is really convening everybody and getting us all on the same page to do what everybody wants to get done, but nobody's willing to do together, and the system's been fractured and evolved in that way, for a long time, and it's getting exacerbated. And we can see that because we have more money than ever before and less programs than ever before. That doesn't make sense. I went and saw some of people that I know who are using right now that are in my family, and they can't get into services, right? They're like, well, I want to go to detox again, whatever. And so they're still using. And the person had gotten 6 COVID shots, so they could get the $150 gift card. You know what I mean? And that's just like, that's not right, and they're smoking blues, these fentanyl pills, and it's pretty bad. Overall. So really appreciate the tone and the intention, Dr. Richardson, on the executive order. Kat, I know you have your hand up, so I'm going to come over to you.
Yeah, and I just sort of want to jump off of what Caroline was saying. Like, we need the rest of the agencies involved in this to have their so what, right? I mean, we know the so what, we wrote it. But, you know, OLCC needs their so what, OHA needs their so what, you know, or Youth Authority needs their so what. Like, so what if I don't respond to the email from ADPC, right? Like, everything is so siloed. Everybody's so focused on their own stuff. COVID's not helping because everybody's in, you know, putting out fires mode right now, especially with the spike that we're hopefully starting to come off of. But we need to bring back that so what, and without us having that authority, it doesn't matter if somebody doesn't respond to us. It doesn't matter if somebody doesn't do something they promised to do. It doesn't matter. So what? And we need to get that so what back into everybody's mind so that they're as jazzed about getting this done and getting the results we're looking for as we are.
Thanks, Kat. And, you know, on the COVID thing, I'll get you, Jill. You know, like, I think COVID in a lot of ways has demonstrated our ability to do exactly what we're saying we want to do. If you look at the response, the data collection, data information sharing that we've done around COVID, we know that we could accomplish something similar to the addiction crisis rapidly if there was the will to do it. So as like Dr. Richardson said, I don't think we can hide behind COVID anymore. COVID has made us better at Zoom meetings, communications, data collection, and reporting. We've gotten really good at it. Go ahead, Jill.
Thank you. I was just thinking as Kat was talking, two things. Are there any examples of something that's more functional in Oregon that we could draw from where there is that so what accountability built in? And then I was just thinking, you know, not related necessarily to this, but I was talking with folks from Arizona about their crisis services. And one of the things they shared is that their state agencies have shared metrics at the state level. Like they have shared accountability metrics so that they all are focused on whatever the thing is, right? Homelessness or whatever. I mean, I know we're not going to get there, but I'm just curious if there's any other examples of within the Oregon state agencies of where there is that level of accountability.
I'm Jill, I'm unaware of it working well in the state. We were part of the National Governors Association Learning Collaborative, and we were able to get information from national leaders around the country. And it seemed to me, and Tori helped me to remember, the key was in each of the states, the governors either declared states of emergency or some action that took their agencies, that required their agencies to respond to the opioid crisis or whatever it might be. That seemed to be the consistent theme of those places where they were doing it well. I've had conversations with the governor's office around that same model and have learned that our state of emergency, the governor's state of emergency powers are very limited. And so it was considered and ruled out because there isn't the power to do some of the things that the other states could do.
Yeah, that's exactly my recollection. Those governors had a position of you shall as opposed to you should, and that made all the difference.
Thank you, guys. And then I have not heard, it's probably really good discussion. I have not heard from Dwight, Nate, and a couple other commissioners. Would you guys like to just chime in, give your perspective? I think it would be really enriching to the conversation. No pressure if not.
I come back to, I don't want to be I haven't reviewed the language, the proposed language. I do, I come back to where I've been a couple times. I think we need to follow the money. I think we need, if we make an effort to better understand what money is being spent where and whether it's being spent consistent with the objectives in the strategic plan, then that will be a opportunity for effectiveness for us. And I share their frustration. I do think we're at an inflection point where we've made significant progress, and now the time is ripe to go to take that money piece.
Yeah, Dwight, your suggestion has rung true in our ears, and we have been, as a staff, trying to do that. Jill was assigned to try to do that. And what we have run up against is, with all due respect to my state agency friends on this call, it feels a lot like a shell game, chasing the pea. And so that's not to say that we shouldn't continue to try to crack that nut. I know I'm mixing metaphors here, but we just haven't been successful thus far.
I think it's so. Mary Ellen, you remember my wife was the ED of the commission at the very beginning. She spent 2 years trying to do it too. I think it will require a kind of this room whiteboarding about what the strategy is with the plan in hand to better, I think you guys can't do it alone, and I appreciate you trying, but it won't work. It needs to be, we need to kind of deploy all of us in an effort to better to get the response we need.
Thanks, Dwight. Nate.
Thanks for that invitation, Tony. So a couple of things. The first is the accountability piece that Carolyn talked about. And I think one of the most impactful ways to have accountability is peer accountability, in that if we do get this executive order out there, officially announced and ordered, that all of our state agencies will have to present their outcomes at least on a quarterly basis. And so many of those folks that are in charge of having to present to the commission, I think there's going to be some pressure on them to actually produce. And I think that will help give accountability system-wide for those stakeholders that are involved with the commission and the strategic plan. Tony's point about the strategic plan and giving them all the different state agencies some direction, I think that other handout that Dr. Richardson sent out earlier this week will speak to that, on what the outcome measures we're looking for specific to the strategic plan. There's a percentage that's for each one of those outcome measures, and I think the highest one that we had on that specific document was 40% completed. So that will give folks a target to sort of work towards for each one of those state agencies. So I think that will help, Tony, with your question. As it relates to the executive order, I fully support that language in there, and I really appreciate the quarterly meetings. I do have some questions about the logistics on some of those things, because we do have a significant amount of the state agencies that will be required to present. And so obviously our agendas are already packed pretty full, so we'll just have to work through some of that and make sure we're being efficient and effective with our time and the other state agencies' time. So we can do that so long as the order is ordered. That's all I have, Tony.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Nate. And I know you have other things to present on, Dr. Richardson. It appears that the majority of the commissioners are in extreme support of the executive order. Is there anything that you need from us, a vote on it to move forward, anything like that, that would be helpful to you and your team's efforts?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would like to record a vote on the executive order. So yes, that I would like the commission to take formal action by formally endorsing the language. The addition, as I've heard so far, is that there needs to be sort of an escalation process added. So we could either do that language and then bring it back to you folks for approval, or you can approve it pending, us coming up with that language. It's really your pleasure on that point.
Okay, thanks. And I think this is my first official commission vote, which is pretty exciting. I get to facilitate that, and I don't know what to say exactly, but we'll move forward with it. So is there a motion to move the executive order? Okay, Dawn makes a motion to move the executive order as is.
Right. Well, with any modifications that are deemed necessary based on our discussion today.
Thanks, Dawn. So we have a motion on the floor. What's up next in my procedures here?
I'll second the motion.
Second.
Anybody second the motion?
I'll second it.
Kat seconds it.
Now you ask for any further discussion?
Do we have any discussion on the motion?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Caroline? Yep,
Okay.
Caroline.
I just wanted to make a comment that we were having the same issues in the 90s, maybe before some of you guys were born, when we were having trouble in terms of directing the youth issue. And I think Tony Bigland would remember, and I think even Dwight. And so the Commission on Children and Family was created. And in order for us to get any type of funds, we all had to we had to sign off on the different plans. And so if we wanted money, that's when the drug-free community dollars were available with Department of Ed. And there was some, I'm seeing teenage pregnancy money, there was some juvenile crime dollars, and there was alcohol and drug. And we could not get our funding until we all met together and shared our plans. And even prior to that in the 80s, definitely before some of you guys were born now, that we actually had all the state different funding come together, and we had to sign off so we could actually know who was doing what and that we were all pushing for the same goals. So I'm looking in terms of the draft, and we talked about bringing people together, but we're not talking about just bringing the people together. I mean, it's easy to have a meeting and say we were brought together and we could mark that off. I think there just needs to be a little bit more meat to it, saying we have to actually sign off on each other's plan, something like that. I don't know, but because we always meet, but we have to have something, I think, a little bit stronger in here, just to say not only do we come together, but we sign off on plans. I know the tribes, this is what we want to do. We already have an agreement to pool our tobacco dollars, to pull out our alcohol and drug dollars out of public health and put it back into the health system because of the continuum of care. And I hope we could do that for the counties in the near future, so we don't break that continuum, and that we're going to advocate for one plan with all these dollars and one reporting mechanism. And so I think the tribes, we're going to do that. So we might be a model, I think, for the counties in the future, because we're frustrated with I monitor 45 grants, all different deliverables, all different reporting mechanism, and it could drive me crazy sometimes. We shouldn't have to do that. We should be able to put all this money, and we should be able to, I mean, when you look at the core part of all these issues, we always see substance abuse as one of the core issues. May it be child protective services and why kids are being removed. May it be accidents related to driving under influence. May it be mental health issues that has alcohol or dual diagnosis. We see alcohol and drug as the main base. So why are we not bringing all these dollars together and have one plan and one reporting mechanism? That's all I have to say.
Okay, Dr. Richard, were you able to capture that?
Yeah. So I think I have what Caroline is saying. So if you folks are comfortable with moving forward, we'll add language in the draft to present to the governor's office, assuming they would go with it. So right now, just to get back to you, Chair, you're asking if there are any other comments about the motion, and then you'll call for the vote.
Yes, sir. Are there any other comments regarding the motion that Dawn put forth before we call a vote? Okay, so we proceed with what, all in favor? Please either say aye or
No, the votes have to be.
Commissioner.
Yep, they have to be recorded. Commissioner Archer, if you would vote yes or no.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson. Commissioner Anderson. Commissioner Cruz.
Yes.
Commissioner Mazziotti.
Yes.
Commissioner Holton.
Yes.
Commissioner Huppy.
Yes.
Commissioner Minty Morris. Commissioner Minty Morris. Commissioner Godwin.
I'm sure it's inoffensive, but my connection cut out. Can you read the motion to me?
Don has moved that that we approve the recommendations for the executive order pending the changes that were suggested.
Yes.
Thank you. Vice Chair Galliron.
Yes.
Commissioner Garrett.
Yes.
Chair Vinza.
Yes.
Okay. Nine in the affirmative. Motion carries. Thank you, commissioners. So if I can I move on, Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, continue on.
Thank you. So also in the same leadership meeting, and for some time, commissioners have asked, how do we track the progress on the strategic plan? And Tori Algie, who's a skilled program project manager, rather, has helped us come up with a document that we are using to track our progress. So the strategic plan has something like 80 some odd strategies and activities. At the last meeting, it was presented our 3-pager where we took that information and tried to boil that down to our most, make it much more succinct. And I'm going to try to share my screen. Dwight made it look so easy. Yes.
Hi, this is Brad. I voted yes when you called my name. I don't think.
Okay.
You hear me.
Thank you. I did not hear you.
I'm sorry. We had someone go home sick early today, so I've been having to do patient care in and out. So I apologize for that.
No problem. Thanks for doing the double duty. I can't see you folks, but I hope you can see my screen.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, so Tori, please jump in at any point. This is the 3 goals that we have in our strategic plan. The first goal really deals with the leadership and system capacity issues. Second is about prevention. Third is about treatment, and fourth is about recovery. I said third, I guess there are 4. And it takes the priority strategies and activities from the last meeting that we had. It just simply articulates those again. It assigns the agency that's responsible. It tells us our status, due date, and then what is the topic that this covers. Again, we have this for all of the strategic plan, but we are really focusing on these top ones that we talked about at the last meeting. So this is how we will be tracking where we are, and this is available at any point in time for folks to get a sense where we are. Now, some of these are, we came up with sorry. Are there any questions to any of this so far? So for each of these strategies and activities, there are at least 5 areas that we look at. Whether or not the project or the process has been initiated, planning part, execution, monitoring and control, and then finally closing of that particular thing. That's how we determine the percentage of complete. There are 5 of those, so it's X over 5, which gives us a sense of where we are in progress. It's not an exact science, but it's our best guess based on the principles that Tori uses in project management to help us stay on track. I'm going to stop sharing so I can see you all and see if there are any questions, comments, or anything, Tori, that I should have said that I missed saying.
No, just one small correction on the spreadsheet in its entirety. There's over 270 activities and strategies, and so we have shortened it significantly. I think there's less than 20 on these prioritized list, and they mirror what we agreed to on that 3-pager at our last meeting.
Great. Thank you. All right. Any other questions or comments about any of that?
I would just say I think that's great tool and it looks really amazing. And I know it probably took a long time to put that together, and I just want to honor the hard work that went behind conceptualizing that. And but you know, it's going to help us, I feel like, in the future understand where we're at, where we're going, and who's responsible to do what. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Tori, for your work on that. Okay. Other thing I just want to remind the commission, we start our prevention subcommittee. We'll have its first meeting next week on the 30th from 1 to 2. Dr. Biglin, as you guys remember, is a emeritus member of the commission and is a prevention scientist, nationally recognized prevention scientist. And so he has agreed to chair the prevention group. And so we will have our first kickoff meeting on the 30th. Tori will staff that. And so you are all invited, of course, but just wanted to bring that to your attention. The final thing I want to share with you that I sent to you that Jill Gray put together. Many of you have asked about the investments that the Oregon Health Authority made this past session, and she put together a chart that I showed, that I sent out to you folks, that shows where each of those investments are, the amount of those investments, and where they line up with our strategic plan. So I will just draw your attention to that. And thank you, Jill, for putting together that information. I think that'll be helpful as we move forward, looking at where those investments. Several of those points are still, we are looking forward to our friends at the Health Authority to let us know their plans for some of the investments that they got from the legislature. And I'm sure that Jill will be more than glad to update that information once it's given to us from the Health Authority. So we thank you for that, Jill. The next thing I'd like to do, with your permission, Chair, is right before we move into the elections, let me explain why we're having an election again, which seems like we have an election every other month. When Andy Jordan was the chair and he left, Tony was voted as as chair to fulfill his rest of his term. And so every September, according to the commission bylaws, we have a new set of elections for officers. The two officers that we have at the commission is the chair and vice chair. And so what we will be doing today is we'll be electing a chair and vice chair. And this time, whoever is going to win that election will be chair for a whole year. And we won't have to do this again for a whole year. So whoever's elected can't do anything, go anywhere, have anything happen to them for a whole year. So we don't have to do this again. All right. But right before that, Chair, with your permission, I'd like to introduce a colleague of mine. I'm going to give him a heads up. Greg Ahrens, are you on? Dr. Ahrens, are you on today's meeting? Dr. Ahrens?
Yes, I am.
Dr. Ahrens, thank you. Dr. Ahrens is a professor of psychiatry from UC San Diego, and he and I have had some conversations about a NIDA sponsored project that he is involved in. He's been listening in on some of our commission meetings, and I just wanted to give him just a couple of minutes, not to do his formal presentation, but just to say a few words about who he is and what his project is, to wet your whistle, because I'm gonna have him come back and give us a full presentation about the exciting work that him and his project they are working towards. And so I'm really excited about him joining, being here in Oregon to help us here in Oregon. And so, Dr. Ahrens, would you just tell us a little bit about what you're doing?
Sure, thank you so much. And good to see you all. We have a already funded project from NIDA, and we were looking for a home to do this work, and have been having conversations with OHA, with CCOs, and with Dr. Richardson. And as he said, we've been sort of stalking you all on the meetings, sort of sitting in the background. But the goal of this project is to think about how we create a climate for use of quality in evidence-based practices. And the way we're doing that is working with agencies and clinics, implementing both motivational interviewing training and a really innovative artificial intelligence quality improvement platform that gives almost immediate feedback about session fidelity, topics discussed in the session, for example, suicidality, where substance abuse problems occur, those types of things. And so the goal is really to raise the bar on quality of behavioral care. And this was of interest to NIDA, of course, but also as we've been talking, the bigger picture is thinking about how advances in technology can be used to help our counselors and therapists improve their skills, really understand how they're engaging their clients and patients, and thinking about how that can be integrated in the systems. So for example, could quality metrics be something that CCOs are thinking about? And could this be used to support quality and incentivize quality at the system level? And we've had those discussions with some partners at OHA. We had a conversation with Jill at Health Share, and so we are beginning our first clinic training next week. And in addition to MI and the technology platform, we work with the agencies on building strong leadership, both at the clinic level and in the organization, to support this initiative, because it's not enough to just provide the technology and train people. There really has to be that impetus, that strong leadership and support. So in a nutshell, that's the short story. Thanks for the time, Commissioner.
This is so consistent with our strategic plan and our workforce initiatives about really training to improve the quality of our workers. And so I'm really excited about the potential of this project. And so you'll hear more about that moving forward in the next coming months. And so we're looking forward to that work. So thank you, Dr. Ahrens. We appreciate you. Chair, with your permission, I'd like to move to the election part of this, if that's okay.
Let's do it.
Okay. So what has been our custom, folks, is that we just open the floor for commissioners to nominate folks for each position. We'll start with vice chair first. We currently have Nate Galliran as vice chair. He is welcome and to run again. I think he's going to. And we will open the floor for nominations for him or for anyone else who chooses to take on that role. So feel free, unmute and put into nomination for vice chair anyone you believe should be in that spot.
Mr. Chair or Dr. Richardson, before the nominations begin, may I say something?
Sir, please.
Okay. I've been part of this commission for a number of years, and I'm on my second 4-year term currently, and it's been a pleasure serving as the vice chair for the past year. And I'm just going to tell you this, it won't hurt my feelings if somebody else is nominated. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
It also wouldn't hurt your feelings if you're nominated.
No, it wouldn't hurt my feelings. No, and I'd be honored to serve.
So this is Caroline, and I nominate Nate Galliran.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you. All right, great. Nate? Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Okay, seeing none, with your permission, everyone, by common consent, I'd like to close the nominations for vice chair and move to nominations for chair. Tony, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, sure. If I were to get reelected, I'd do the same thing that I've been doing now, which is work really hard. My philosophy is that, it's a community-driven process, and I bring the community in. That includes the commission. It includes our partners like Heather, the people, of course, are at the forefront of what I do. Mike Marshall is always welcome. So, that's just my philosophy, and that's how I go about things, is facilitation. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Oh, are there any nominations for chair?
This is Caroline. I nominate.
Brad, I nominate.
Hey. Okay, you go ahead and nominate since I nominate Nate. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I nominate Tony.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right.
Just a second.
Carolyn, were you going to also nominate Tony, or were you going to bring another name?
No, I was going to nominate Tony. Okay. I like the Tony and the Nate team. I want them for another. So I was just trying to speed up the process, but this is fine.
Caroline's also known as the puppet master.
Right. Are there any other names for nomination for chair? All right, with common consent, we'll close. Thank you, Kat. We'll close nominations for chair. So now, since it's really the team of Tony and Nate, we'll start with Nate, and just yes if you agree for him to be chair, and no if you disagree. And this is for just vice chair. Okay, Commissioner Archer.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cruz.
Yes.
Commissioner Mazziotti.
Yes.
Commissioner Holton.
Yes.
Commissioner Gilpey. Cupie. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Minty Morris. Commissioner Godwin. Morgan. Commissioner Galliran.
Do I abstain or do I don't know.
No, you just say yes.
Yes, okay.
Commissioner Garrett.
Yes.
Commissioner Vesna.
Yes.
Okay, great. Now let's move for chair. Yes if you agree, no if you don't agree. Yes. Commissioner Archer. Jill?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cruz.
Yes.
Commissioner Mazziotti.
Yes.
Commissioner Holton.
Yes.
White. Commissioner Hoopy.
Getting there. Yes. Just pretend there's a Y in it.
It doesn't help because I
pretend
still
there's a Y
haven't.
before the U.
I haven't changed your name on my list, and it throws me off every time. But I say Don's name every time different too. I just, sorry. Commissioner Minty Morris, Commissioner Godwin, Commissioner Galliran.
Yes.
Commissioner Garrett.
Yes.
Commissioner Vesna.
Yes.
All right. Congratulations, Commissioner Nate and Tony, for re-election for your full 12-month term. Woohoo! And at some point we should think about changing the bylaws to do it maybe a little longer. All right, sir. With your permission, I'll return the section back over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much. It looks like we are at public comment time. Is there anybody from the public who would like to chime in? Heather, go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you for all the words spoken today by the commissioners. I just really makes me feel hopeful as things just seem to be moving so slowly. So I just really wanted to say thank you for the hard work and the passion and really supporting access, equitable access and access in a strong system in Oregon. Thank you so much for being such a great partner. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Heather. And we really appreciate you making time out of your busy schedule to come to these meetings and help us, know what's going on out there and how to be effective. Is there anybody else? I see Mike, your video is turned on, so I assume that you're getting ready.
No, I didn't have anything per se other than, we, as you may know, about 20 folks signed a letter to the governor asking her to step up and take more leadership around just the workforce crisis. We met with Jackie Yerby and Tony, her latest advisor, and I'm blanking on his last name, Lapis. And I don't know if it was shared because I've been in and out of this meeting. the letter that Pat Allen sent to Steve Allen sent to all the providers. But we are still strongly encouraging the governor to articulate her own personal support and the support of the governor for the workforce and the issues they're facing, and to help what I think we all believe OHA staff are doing really yeoman's work relative to all the things they have to prioritize. And we're just asking the governor to elevate the concern for the collapse of the system. And you know, I don't know if these statistics were shared, and Heather, correct me if I'm wrong, because they came from Heather, but since COVID started, we've gone from 690 some beds to 390 some beds in the adult care system, and from like 110 to 44 in the juvenile care system. And so we started out 47th in access to treatment, and we've seen the adult system contract by 40% relative to just, and recognizing treatment beds are hardly the whole entirety of the system, but it's a significant issue, and it would be really terrific if this governor would start to follow along what she declared in 2018, which was that this was a public health crisis. It's that much more so today. So,
yeah, thank you, Mike. Those numbers are accurate to the end of August, and I just hate to ask our members to redo those numbers so much because they're so busy with with just trying to keep programs open. And I really appreciate you bringing that up. And I think it is across the whole system. And what we do know is that even outpatient, which is really not getting any attention at all, is that we see that the outpatient staffing is almost 50% understaffed now also. So it is a system-wide problem. It is really horrifying. And so again, like I said earlier, I just greatly appreciate all of our partners stepping up with the same voice. So many, Mike and so many other partners, folks from the kids system, from the hospitals, and it's just feeling, we'll just keep ringing the bell from all the roofs. That's all I have to say until somebody hears about the fire. Yeah.
Chair Vezina, there's another set of statistics that we just came across. It was a direct consequence of Commissioner Clarkson at the last meeting talking about how they had seen a huge spike in the number of overdose deaths just in 2021. Representative Sanchez reached out to the chief medical officer in the state because Commissioner Clarkson could not provide alcohol-related statistics. And the chief medical examiner went back and looked at 2019 to 2020. And while there was a 39% increase in fatal drug overdoses, there was a 71% increase in fatalities related to alcohol. And that's not including drunk driving accidents. Now, the actual numbers were significantly lower than the CDC projections. So we're working to figure out why that is. But the chief medical examiner will be releasing the data officially in his annual report in November 7th. And so I just want to continue to remind everyone that when we talk about addiction, we talk about drugs and alcohol, that alcohol continues to be overwhelmingly a destructive force in the state.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And if you can send us those data points, it'd be really appreciated. Okay, we have one more person, and then we'll adjourn the meeting. Victor.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
There was a couple of things I wanted to bring up. The state has used the stick as opposed to the carrot for a very long time in a really harsh manner on people in mental health and substance abuse disorders. And we're still not talking about the carrot. We're still not talking about things like that would serve us as well, like helping them get their record expunged and helping them the accountability factor we were talking about for these different systems, because these people don't get just drug addiction charges. They get other charges. And the system tends to abuse the ability to punish people because they're addicts, because they're homeless, because they've been surviving by stealing or whatever. And so those punishments add up, and they just crush a person. And so rewarding them instead when they start climbing back up the ladder, instead of continuing to punish them, is something that's important. Just getting out of their way. It's at some point start to include their resume instead of just their criminal record when we're making judgments. They rip families apart. They take the children away from one partner and give them to the other. They do the same thing with the estate in family court. They take the entire estate and give it to one person, and it's not even because of a particular conviction. It can just be because of a perception. And this has gone on way too long. There needs to be some way to start helping build these people back up after we've torn them down, after we've given them jail time, after we've given them a choice between jail and treatment. We need to start building them back up. And I'd love to see one of those things be access to those motivational interviewing workshops, because those are expensive workshops.
No, totally. Thank you so much for that, Victor. And we're out of time for the public comment section, but I think everybody here echoes your sentiments that we need to design a system that's more responsive and based on restorative justice principles and dignity and helping people move into services and bettering their life that's not punitively based. So I really appreciate you attending the meeting today and bringing that up. And maybe in the future, one of our agendas could have more of incentive-based methodologies like contingency management and stuff like that. There's some good emerging practices around that.
Yeah, it would be really good if people could be helped a little farther. Instead of just giving them counseling, they could actually help to become the counselor in order to reinforce their own skills.
Absolutely appreciate that. And with that, you guys will adjourn the meeting today. And just last kind of comment is just appreciate Dr. Richardson and his staff and everything that you're doing. We got your back. Please let us know when you send the executive order, and I'll make sure to follow up with my own personal phone call to the governor's office.
Thank you, commissioners. Appreciate all of you. Thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.